When I was in college, not even a year ago, I was able to make almost $100 a day from days that I would go out and DoorDash, and it wouldn't take me no more than 6 hours. And honestly, it wasn't a bad gig, making over 20 bucks an hour just kind of driving around, listening to podcasts and whatever while I was in my college town. And it was honestly not a bad gig at all. And if you want to do the same, I'm going to be teaching you some of the tips and tricks that I use in order for you to be making the exact same kind of money that I was. Before I graduated college, I was doing DoorDash almost every single day, and I was consistently able to make almost 500 bucks a week, which was more than enough to pay for textbooks, food, whatever else. And it was honestly not a bad gig, just driving around listening to music or podcasts or whatever, just delivering food up and back. And I would highly recommend that you guys do it because it is not a bad gig at all. There's a lot of flack for DoorDashing online, and I don't think it's quite deserved. I think DoorDash drivers are doing the world a service. I have been ordering DoorDash more and more recently, and it's great. I don't have to drive half an hour to go get whatever. I can pay them to do it for me, and it's awesome. I'm a huge fan of using DoorDash, and in today's video, I want to be teaching you how to be the best DoorDash driver that you could. So the first thing you're going to do is that you're going to want to buy the DoorDash bag, and I know it's like kind of a meme at this point to have the DoorDash bag. You don't have to get the DoorDash bag exactly, but getting some kind of thermal bag where if you put food inside, it will stay warm regardless of what you're doing, is instantly just going to boost your service, because a lot of the times you're going to be driving 10-15 minutes, and the last thing you want is your customer's food being cold when you deliver it to them, provided that it's not something already cold, which in that case you can kind of do whatever you want with it. But actually caring about the quality of service that you're delivering and actually trying to be the best kind of dasher that you can reasonably be is what is going to be making you the most amount of tips. Now, DoorDash has been getting a lot of flack for not paying its drivers the best, which I agree. Per drive that I would do, I'd only make usually around $2, $5, maybe $7, which a lot of these would take a minimum of half an hour. So how do we actually make some money from DoorDash driving? The answer is tipping. If you really want to make good money from DoorDashing, I'm telling you about 70% of the money that you're going to be making is from tips. And what I like actually is that DoorDash has automatically put in the feature that generally whenever you place an order, you're just going to tip the driver anyway. And when they say that 100% of that order goes directly to the driver, that's 100% legit. So personally, whenever I DoorDash food, I always make sure that I'm tipping at least $5, because you got to remember, DoorDash drivers are basically your chauffeurs. You're being treated like a king. They're delivering food to you. It's the same thing with waiters. And I think the biggest marker of someone being a piece of crap or not is if they tip their service workers. And I think DoorDash and Uber Eats and even Uber and Lyft drivers should be included in this category as service workers. The other thing that I would recommend doing is that I'd recommend using an app like Solo. Solo is this really easy to use app, which basically allows you to easily manage your finances, which includes gas and how many miles you drive and how many dashes you do a day and how many dashes you do a week. And I really liked using Solo just to track everything, because a lot of this gets really, really complex and you're like, oh God, I delivered this guy to McDonald's and I did this. How much money did I make from it? And it's kind of a cluster headache. And I would highly recommend using something like Solo. And if you sign up with my link down below, you will get a free $10, and you'll also be supporting the channel when you do it, provided that you link up your DoorDash account to it. Which, with that also being said, I do have a DoorDash sign up down below, and you will be supporting the channel if you go ahead and sign it up, so I can go ahead and make more videos just like this for you guys. The other thing that I would recommend is that I would recommend setting a consistent schedule for dashing. In DoorDash, they actually allow you to set up a literal schedule, so you can go from 9 to 8. You could do a full 11 like that. You could do just 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. You could do the lunch rush from 11 to 1. You could do the dinner rush from 5 to 8. And I would recommend you guys do that because it will set up a specific time frame for you and it will allow you to stay consistent. The other thing I would recommend doing is I would usually only recommend dashing during hot hours. Now, the hot hours is usually going to depend on the area, but generally it's going to be the breakfast and the lunch rush is where you're going to be finding the most amount of dashes in order for you to deliver. And this is also true for Uber Eats. So if you were like me and you're a college student, for me, I try to block out my mornings so I wouldn't have any classes in the mornings. And I would always make sure to do my homework before I would go to bed. And usually the first thing that I would do in the day is I would go out and DoorDash, and I would do this for a while, but I actually decided to pivot more towards the lunch rush because I like using my mornings for productivity. Like these days, I use my mornings to record and edit videos. And honestly, I think it's a much better use of my time. And I think if you're going to try and be productive and build up some other kind of side hustle, then I would recommend mainly using the mornings for that, when you're freshed up on coffee and when you're just ready to go out and attack the world. However, If you're not like me and you work better at some time else during the day, then make sure that you take advantage of that. And whenever you're not working your best, and whenever you're not working your best on school or on work or anything else that you're planning on doing, use this in between hours to go ahead and go out and DoorDash, because that's when you're going to be making the most amount of money. But try and at least be hitting the lunch rush. If not the lunch rush, then the dinner rush. And I know I said breakfast rush, and a lot of people are like, well, what breakfast rush? Everyone just gets breakfast at the college dorm. That's where you were at, right? Or wherever you're going, everyone just has breakfast at home. You would be surprised the amount of orders that I get in the morning for like Starbucks and Beans and Brew or whatever there's called, or the local coffee shop down the street. You would be surprised the number of orders that you get during breakfast. It is like insane. And they also tip generally pretty well because the order size is not that much. So they're like, oh yeah, I'll spend an extra $5 and make it a $20 order, because humans like seeing the roundup. So there's a lot of potential to be making money in the mornings, but personally, I always found the most to do during lunch, because lunch is when people are ordering from work, and lunch is usually the meal that most people kind of forget about. And because of that, they're like, oh yeah, I'll just go and order DoorDash. And then all of a sudden you're getting this list of orders where you could basically do anything you want with it. And let's also talk about how long you should be willing to drive. I never would take a dash that would take me more than 20 minutes to half an hour. I would never do anything more than that, even though the pay is better. And the reason why is just because you get separated from your central locale. So I was pretty lucky because I was in a college town that was separated from, let's call it, the rest of the state by a mountain. You had to drive through a mountain pass. So I would mainly stick around in my college town area, and then I would just do dashes in between. I would do dashes to faculty, to students, and because of that, it was pretty local and it was easy to kind of stick in that area. But when I decided to try and dash in my hometown, I was finding that I was ending up on like an hour down from where my house is, and then I have to drive an hour all the way back, and you're just wasting time and you're wasting money when you do that. So I would highly recommend trying to stick to a central area, and DoorDash actually allows you to choose your central location, and you can tell it that I am not going to be taking any more dashes outside of this area, and this is just going to be a good thing for you overall, because you're not going to be wasting your time just bouncing back and forth between locations. But before we end this video, I want to leave you with one piece of advice. DoorDash driving is not the best side hustle ever. It's not what's going to make you the most amount of money, and it's not going to be something that's making thousands and thousands of dollars a month. For me, the max I ever make was 2K, and honestly, I was dashing for 120 hours that month, and it's not really worth that much time. Anyway, that is going to be it for today's video. If you found it all interesting or engaging, make sure you sign up for Solo and for DoorDash using the links down below to go ahead and support the channel. For full transparency, I will be receiving a kickback from that, but I do think that they are good tools for you guys to go ahead and use, especially Solo. It was an absolute lifesaver for even figuring out how much I made from DoorDashing it entirely, because honestly, a lot of it came in my account, and a lot of it went because I was driving back home and I had to spend a lot of money on gas. Oh, and the other thing is that Solo will actually track your expenses, and they will track gas as an expense, which means that you can use that as a tax write-off. Use your gas when you DoorDash as a tax write-off. Do not forget about that. Use it as a tax write-off. Like, business expenses are tax write-offs, even if you're self-employed. Use it as a tax write-off. You will save a ton of money. Like, you will save a ton of money, and you will most likely get a pretty fat tax return if you have a real job or if you don't. But that is my guide for DoorDashing as someone who did it when they were in college. And if this was at all interesting or engaging, make sure you click on one of these videos right here, where you can check out more of my videos on this channel, as well as going ahead and subscribing to the channel. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a good day.